I know when you retired, and we had a great feature on you on Nesson, but just like Brad and even Big Z were talking about, when they retire, they transition a little bit more into being more present at home, being a dad, and you've got two young kids, and just being able to do that. So I don't know how much you're watching hockey after you retired, but do you ever sit down and catch some games, or is it only if something big is going on?
No, I sure do. Yeah, I enjoy watching it. Yeah, hockey fan first before player. So I still enjoy watching the game. It's kind of interesting. This will probably segue for you, but found myself, rooting for the Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is like totally counter to my soul, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
it's cool to see guys you played with still going at it, obviously, and Bruins fan first, but still pulling for your buddies, and I definitely watch the games and follow along as much as I can.
All right. So yeah, great segue. It's like you're in TV or something. Yeah. With Brad, obviously the Bruins are in this, retool as they put it, and all the moves that were made at the deadline and all of those familiar faces, some of the really core players of the Bruins no longer wearing a Bees sweater. Let's start with Brad Marchand. What was your reaction when he was not only traded, Kevin, but to your point, traded to the Florida Panthers?
Yeah, it was if I was a betting man, I would have said no chance. But this is hockey. It's a business. This is as clear as it can be regarding that. And I think I was, as everybody else was, pretty bummed when that happened. But I understand it, and obviously, I think they did the right thing by sending him to a team that is competing for a Stanley Cup. And I think that was a good conversation between Brad and Swings and them. And so good on them to do that. And I think that that's much appreciated from Brad that he ended up there. And obviously I'm super happy for him, just being his good buddy. And so, being back and forth with him about that was pretty funny. Asking him all these questions about, how was it stepping in the room the first time, but awesome to see him win. He was playoff Marshy was in full effect. I'm pulling for him in every way I can. And it was a little bit the same with Carlo, like one of my really good buddies, Carlo, going to Toronto, and instantly overnight became a Leafs fan. So it was just both of those were a little bit not expected, but here we are today. So.
I'm just ingesting this quick story out of nowhere, but you mentioned Brandon Carlo, and I just want to say, Adam, I don't know if you know this, but some of my favorite memories, I think it was just 2 years into the job, and I came in at the end of 2019, so COVID obviously hit in 2020, and everything was social distancing, so we couldn't really hang out. But Brandon Carlo and Kevan Miller, you guys weren't playing. You guys were recovering from injuries, and you're sitting on, I don't even know where. I don't think it was the 9th floor, because I was on the 9th floor, wherever. We were in the garden. But Brandon Carlo would message me, Adam, when he was with Kevin, and I would have live hits, and they would dare me to throw in certain words. Do you remember, like shenanigans or banana or something?
Funny.
Do you remember?
So funny.
And they
you
would
did
be
it
like,
well.
okay.
There were a couple times where you got it pretty good.
Yeah, I did. I think I said there was one that I was rolling on the floor laughing right after the hit, and I think Brendan messaged me and said, like, that was unbelievable. I don't know what the word was. It could have been shenanigans, but yeah, so they would throw in a word at him, and then I would have to throw it in live in the hit. I didn't always, but that's how we kept ourselves entertained. And I really appreciate you guys for making my job a little more fun too. It was a good time.
Well, like seriously impressive, because if you're trying to think about that while doing a live interview and keep a straight face to throw in a word like shenanigans, that is true skill. So we were very we weren't easy on the verbiage, and it got harder as time went on. So it was it definitely kept us busy.
There was one, and I'll get off this, but we had to do our interviews via Zoom. So just kind of like this, where we couldn't. You remember, obviously, we couldn't interview you guys, so we had to do them via Zoom with like the whole media. And I think Brandon's like, try to get in the sentence right, meow. and I couldn't find a way to do it, but he was actually at the podium. So I guess he had asked, and then I didn't do it that game, but he was at the podium in the next game. And I did say something like, I think he was coming back from injury. I'm like, how are you feeling, right, meow? And he tried to keep a straight face at the podium. And I was like, yeah, I lost it. And I lost it behind the camera. And anyway, those were good times. And I miss you guys for sure. But I can see why you're rooting for Brando, because you said he was a good buddy. Or between the two of them when they were facing each other, that must have been a hard one. But I guess the better team did advance. Okay, I can keep talking about that. I'll transition to a Marchand question. You talk about Zdeno Chara, no surprise what he's doing. Were you surprised at all at how impactful Brad was in the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Oh man, no, I not one bit. And then it's kind of funny because Marshy's usually first line. He's playing against the first pair D, first line on the other team. Pair D, and you just some people don't take that into account. That man, he just flourished. I don't think it would have been a problem if he's playing against the first line guys, but I think it just added to his ability to score and make plays, and when you got a guy like Brad Marchand, on the third line, it just shows you how deep a team like the Panthers are. And it was fun to watch, but I kept telling everybody, like, hey, playoff Marshy, when that guy gets when he gets going, look out. So, and that was kind of clear. So no surprise to me.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, with free agency and everything that goes along with it, the word dynasty isn't really thrown around too much, but the Panthers are probably as close as you'll get in today's day and age at having a dynasty. What's impressed you about, as somebody who played the game and as somebody who's a fan of the game, what's impressed you the most about the Panthers?
Well, I think, and they talk about this, they're kind of open about it, where, we talked about it in the Bruins, is that, hey, we had this culture that was, driven by a number of guys that were there, Big Z, Patrice, Krejci, like Brad, and all these guys that came through. But they're pretty open about it, that the culture down in Florida is something that's really, it's a winning culture. It's infectious. It's guys want to be a part of that. You see these guys are signing before they're getting free agency to find out even what the money's worth, because they don't want to leave. They want to be a part of that winning culture. I think Kachuk even openly said this is a dynasty, and I can't disagree with him, because if you're putting money on who the betting favorite is for the next couple of years to win the Stanley Cup, it's the Panthers, and it's fun to watch. Really weird to say as a Bruins fan. But still, I think those guys they've leaned into each other, and they've done a really good job of creating that culture and a winning atmosphere.
And listen, I'm just because we're talking about culture so much, we can transition back, Adam, if you want, to the Stanley Cup final. But I just want to ask you about because we talk about it so much here with the Bruins. And I remember when I first joined the team and I heard about the reputation of the Boston Bruins from Toronto, and I was like, okay, like, how great can it be? And then I was like, wow, this is amazing. It was very, very different than covering the Toronto Maple Leafs in all facets. And I loved it so much. And so there's talk about how that kind of shifted this year. A little bit of that was lost, and how one of Marco Sturm's and the next captain, whoever that's going to be, their big job is to make sure they keep that alive and well. I'm going to throw out some words that I felt I noticed, but I obviously wasn't a player, but like accountability, work ethic, respect, those are really big cogs in the culture. Can you dive into what made the Boston Bruins what they have been for so long culture-wise in the room? Like, what other things, what other words or characteristics would you use to describe the Bruins when they were rolling?
Yeah, well, I think just kind of first and foremost that comes top down, whether that's ownership, President Cam and Sweeney, they kind of set the mark on that. They've been, over the years, they've been so good at identifying players that are going to fit the Bruins culture. And they've done a phenomenal job in that regard, bringing in guys who are going to add to that. And I don't think that they changed that at all, but I do think it's man, it just, you lose guys like, Big Z, and then Patrice and Krejci and then Brad. And it's just, these guys had been there for so long. It's not an overnight transition to say, hey, here's the reins to whoever, and we're going to continue what's going on. It's something that's built over time. And, they've invested over the past, 10 years, more than that, to be a winning program. And they sent off a lot of draft picks. They sent off a lot of assets to try and win. And credit to them. I give them all the credit in the world. They tried so hard for so long to win, and we were so damn close a few times that, but there has to be like some kind of transition at one point when some of these guys leave. And I think I saw a little bit of that this year. And, I know talking to Brad, he did everything he could to pull that together. And I think he did a phenomenal job as captain. He was a no-brainer to be the captain, but it takes a group to be a part of that. I know Pasta's done a good job at that as well, and he was around a lot of that when I was there, obviously, to transition that. But it's more than a few guys to pull on the rope, and I think they're in the position now to reestablish that. I think that Marcus Sturm's going to do a great job in that regard, because he did that in Ontario and he developed guys and they had a culture there. And so everything that I've heard is that he's going to do a great job in that regard and pull the group back together, and then. I think that a lot of those conversations are probably happening right now, as guys are back on the ice and tooling up for training camp. And I think the leadership group's probably going through a lot of that stuff right now, is that, hey, how are we going to, put our foot back in the sand here and say, all right, we're turning the ship in the right direction. So, I'm pulling for him in every way I can, but I think, when you lose guys like Patrice and Z, and Krejci and Brad, it's tough to just turn the page overnight. So,
you mentioned Marco Sturm, Kevin. As a player, what's the most important quality that you want in your head coach?
Communication, I think. Some coaches are better at it than others, or have different versions of communication, and some guys, take it in different ways. But a coach that is going to be honest with you and communicate with you is first, where you're very clear what your job and your role is. There's no beating around the bush. There's no telling you one thing and doing another, and I think, just from what I've heard, he's great at that. He's great at communicating with players. He's great at developing young talent. And so, I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. He's a younger guy as well, and he's been in the league just 10 years ago or so. I mean, I think he's going to do a phenomenal job. And I think that you want coaches that are going to be honest with you. And so I see them doing a pretty good job of that this year.
Through so many rides, but one of them was a lower stretch where you missed the postseason in 2015 and 16. So going into the following year after that, what were I don't know if it's characteristics again, I'm probably using the wrong word. Obviously, the NHL, there's so much parity, so there's skill across the board. So maybe what were some of the changes made that were able to get you guys back into a postseason after missing it?
We had that year we had a ton of injuries going into that kind of stretch towards the end there, and I think that we had some transition of guys going out and guys coming in, and we were so I think we missed it by like 1 point or something like that. We knew we had the skill in the room to not just get into the postseason but make a run. So it wasn't like we're freaking out because we didn't make the playoffs. It was okay. We really need to dial in here a few areas and get back to our Bruins way of hockey. And I think the next year we were right back at it. So it wasn't like I think we were in a different situation than they are right now. They talk about retool. They have so many young talent, so many young talent players that are coming in. They signed some guys for free agency. And so I think it's going to be really important for them to get off to a good start. And like I said, I think they probably, I'm just spitballing here. They probably are diving in really hard here on having a really good training camp and getting guys all on the same page to pull on the rope early. So.
Yeah, and actually that's something that they had talked about over the course of the season, was how disjointed the training camp was last year between some of the injuries they had, some of the uncertainty with contract situations. And so getting out of the gate, how important is it to have a good training camp to set yourself up for success to start the season?
It's huge. You want to get off to a really good start. I mean, historically, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's like something crazy. Like the team that's the top 8 teams that are in the playoffs come like November 15th or something like that are almost like 85% chance of making it to the playoffs. So the first part
it's the Thanksgiving rule. It's usually the Thanksgiving rule, right?
Pretty much. And so that's not that's there for a reason. I think and teams are really wanting to get off to a good start, and so when you see it last year, there's just some things in the background going on that it whether people believe it or not, it does weigh on guys. It weighs on the room. You feel different in the room, and just if you're off by 0.5% or 1% here, it just those are points that you want and need to get at that time of the year. And so, you always say, we got plenty of season left. Well, no, you really don't. Every game counts, and you really want to get off to a good start. So I think they're probably going to put a heavy emphasis on making sure everybody's there early, a part of what's going on with the captain skates, getting the culture right, having those big meetings together, and then being ready to go when the puck drops.
I want to transition quick to youth on the team. James Hagan's drafted by the Boston Bruins, first round, 7th pick, going to BC. A lot of the discussion with the guests we've had on the show is, should he do the year? Not our choice, obviously, but should he do the year? Would it be beneficial to come up a little bit? What's your take on this still very young, but hopefully going to be very impactful in the NHL player for the Boston Bruins? Would you even toy with seeing him on some NHL ice, or just let him focus on college hockey?
I think it's awesome, and Sweens and the Bruins have done a good job of drafting guys that are just right in their backyard, which is, I think it's really valuable to have that, where they can go over and have communication with them after a game at BC, and as you can probably see, we've had a number of guys from BC come through and do really good things. So I think it's up to the organization and how this player is, how he is between the years. Is he grown up enough to really come in and transition from a college game to a pro game and add that many games? And with the game going, it's so fast and so physical and so skilled now that it's one of those things where you really want to make sure that he's ready before you put him in the lineup, because it can snowball and go the other way. And so those are I'm sure they're having those conversations right now where they're, hey, is he ready, or is it better to have him another year? And I would say, personally, I was late, right? So very late. I wasn't even close to his age to look at the NHL. So, but I think they'll make the right decision. I think he's from all accounts, a great player, good person, and he's in a great spot to do some good things, whether it's at BC or coming right in and contributing. So we'll kind of see. We'll leave that up to the pros with Sweens and Cam and those guys to sort it out.
I did want to ask you about, one of the moves in free agency in particular that the Bruins made, signing Tanner Jeannot to the 5-year deal. Obviously somebody who's very physical. Your style of play was very physical as a defenseman. Obviously he plays the forward position, but how important is it to have a guy like that on the roster that can sort of, stand up for some of those skill players?
I don't know much about him. I know a little bit, watched him a few times, but I can just say that if you look at the Stanley Cup teams over the past 10 years, they had guys like this. They had a number of guys like this. They leaned heavily on those guys. They were big role players come down the stretch. He's great. He's not going to score you 20 goals in the regular season. That's fine, because I promise you, when playoffs come around, they're going to be loving that guy for every minute and every hit, every block shot, every leaning on this guy or the other. That he's so valuable. And I think it was a great signing. They've got a few of those guys now. Obviously, you see Freddie leave, which was tough, and I think he fills that void a little bit. And it'll be interesting to see kind of where they put him in the lineup. But yeah, I think it was a great sign. I think he'll help a ton. I think he's been around the league here for a little bit now, and he can be a guy that can go into the room and be a leader and have some voice in there. And he's now going to feel comfortable that he's going to be there for some time, and so he could put some roots down and really kind of lead into the Bruins' way. So he seems to fit the bill. Like I said, they've done a good job bringing in guys like that in the past, and I think he'll fit in just great.
How much truth is there to something that Don Sweeney said in his press conferences is like, and we know when Bruce Cassidy was around too, that was a really big message, but it was like this internal competition and guys in the A could be called up at any point. Your roster spot's not safe. Maybe that's not, great, but you do want to create at least that there's this day in and day out or game in and game out, you're playing with pride and knowing that you've got to be your best. And they have a lot of guys that will be in training camp fighting for positions. How much truth is there to that, to making a team better when that's the case?
Oh, a lot. I think there's a lot to that. And I don't, I would argue it's even healthier to have more of that. And to be honest with guys and say, hey, it's not, watch your back, but it's just, you need to show up every day. You need to put the work in every day. And if there's more, I think if there's more of that, I promise you your training camp's going to be better. Because those guys are going to be laying it on the line every single day. They're going to go out there. They know they got eyes on them every single day. And so I think it will help them a lot. And they'll be more game ready come time when it's the real puck getting dropped and you're not in preseason, you're not playing against each other anymore. And the more of that, the better. They've preached that in the past, and it's tough to do when you have a really veteran lineup. But those guys that are really veteran lineup, they understand that they need to make sure they're ready when the puck drops. So it's just a little bit different dynamic, but this year will be awesome to watch, as those guys are all going to be putting their best foot forward. And they better, because if you're not, then the guy right behind you is probably going to take your spot. So those things are always healthy. I think, I know Butchie preached that a lot when I was there, and same with Claude. But yeah, I think it'll help them a lot.
Well, you've been there, done that, man, and we really appreciate your perspective. Also appreciate, just your time here on the Hockey Hub. Your first episode, maybe the first of, many. I don't know. Maybe we'll have you back. It'd be great.
I'd like to have you on again. Yeah, I'd have you back.
I appreciate it. So I made the cut. No, it was great to connect with you guys. Obviously, good to see Sophia. And great to see you guys. Like, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun to talk this stuff. I enjoy it. So, and then obviously, thanks for supporting the Warrior for Life Fund and having us on to talk about that.
Absolutely, and look forward to talking more about. Look forward to talking more about the event coming up in Boston towards the end of the year. So we'll have you on before that. That'll be a lot of fun. So former Bruins defenseman Kevan Miller. Yeah, go ahead.
Frank has been the key kind of, Frank Simonetti. He's been the guy that's driving the bus on that, and he's been awesome. So I mean, he can speak about it better than anybody. But yeah, he's been a huge not addition obviously, but a guy that's driven the bus for us for a while. And but we're happy to be on and happy to talk about it. And thanks again for having me on.
Awesome. Kevan Miller, former Boston Bruins defenseman here on the Hockey Hub. Kevin's going to step aside, but Sophia and I will be back right after this.